Sandy Ground is the hottest town. Boat race going, people around. Everybody just getting down. August Thursday, the grand finale. The people that's really party. Everybody who don't miss me, shouting out to railway. Everybody who don't miss me, shouting out to railway. Then comes the end of carnival. Back to home you must go. All the fun right now is over. Next year, come back for more. We hope you had a real grand time, and will always remember this one line. Anguilla is a land of beauty, peace and happiness. This is when we start our spree. August Monday gonna start the fun. Sandy Ground is the hottest town. Boat race going, people around. Everybody just getting down. August Thursday, the grand finale. The people just really party. Everybody who don't miss me, shouting out to railway. Everybody who don't miss me, shouting out to railway. Anguilla, Anguilla, Anguilla time. Beautiful beaches. Anguilla, Anguilla, Anguilla time. Friendly faces. Anguilla, Anguilla, Anguilla time. Anguilla, Anguilla, Anguilla time. God bless you. Anguilla, Anguilla, Anguilla time. Beaches. Anguilla, Anguilla, Anguilla time. Friendly faces. Anguilla, Anguilla, Anguilla time. Anguilla, Anguilla, Anguilla time. August Monday to start the fun. Sandy Ground is the hottest town. Boat race going, people around. Everybody just getting down. August Thursday, the grand finale. The people that's really party. Everybody who don't miss me, shouting out to railway. Everybody who don't miss me, shouting out to railway. Watch me. Land of the sea and the sun. Carnival is a time when a lot of people come down to line. All the natives come back home, come down to celebrate and have fun with their own. All the activities involved, the preparations we were making all year long. The boosting from the radio to let the people know Carnival is for sure. August Monday to start the fun. Sandy Ground is the hottest town. Boat race going, people around. Everybody just getting down. August Thursday, the grand finale. The people that's really party. Everybody who don't miss me, shouting out to railway. Everybody who don't miss me, shouting out to railway. On the day of the parade, the king and the queen leading the whole scene. All the troops them on the road, and the bands them jamming, carrying the load. Such beautiful colors and smiles of happiness and love for each other. Celebrating our freedom, showing togetherness and respect for our homeland. August Monday to start the fun. Sandy Ground is the hottest town. Boat race going, people around. Everybody just getting down. August Thursday, the grand finale. The people that's really party. Everybody who don't miss me, shouting out to railway. Everybody who don't miss me, shouting out to railway. Then comes the end of carnival. Back to home you must go. All the fun right now is over. Next year, come back for more. We the start, the fun. Sandy ground is the hottest town. Boat race going, people are around. Everybody just getting down. August Thursday's the grand finale. The people that's really party. Everybody don't miss it. Shouting out to railway. Everybody don't miss it. Shouting out to railway. Land of the sea and the sun. Carnival is a time when a lot of people come down to line. All the natives come back home, come down to celebrate and have fun with their own. All the activities involved, the preparations we were making all year long. The boosting from the radio to let the people know Carnival is for sure. August Monday, the start, the fun. Sandy Brown is the hottest town. Boat race going, people are wrong. Everybody just getting down. August Thursday, the grand finale. The people that's really party. Everybody who don't miss it, shouting out to railway. Everybody who don't miss it, shouting out to railway.
Good evening and a warm welcome to everyone here and listening at home. Let us stand for the national prayer, the national song in a word of prayer.
God bless Anguilla, nurture and keep her, noble and beauteous she stands mid the sea. O land of the happy, a haven we'll make thee. Our life and love we give unto thee. With heart and soul we build our we stand throughout every age. With hearts and souls we'll build our nation proud, strong and free. We love our homes, her tears to our hearts for eternity. Let truth and light the banner be. We'll march ever on. Let truth and right the banner be. We'll march ever on. God bless Anguilla.
Remain standing for the word of prayer. Bow your heads. Heavenly Father, thank you for your mercies this and every day. May you guide tonight's proceedings. I pray that it is fruitful and just. May your protection take us to our respective homes safely, all in your holy name. Amen. And you can sit. At this time, I'll introduce our candidates for this evening. Mrs. Cora Richardson Hodge and Mr. Jerome Roberts. Our moderators are Ms. Michaela Skellicky from the National Youth Ambassadors Corps, and Mr. Jasani Gums from the ALHCS Debating Society. I'll now turn the proceedings over to them.
Sound? Yes. Good evening once again. We welcome you to the final district debates, and we are joined this evening, as was introduced by Karina, by Mrs. Cora Richardson Hodge and Mr. Jerome Roberts. We want to welcome everyone again, those listening via radio and via the virtual platform. We have the Anguilla National Youth Council has organized this event so that nominees contesting the upcoming 2020 elections will be given a chance to debate several areas of sustainable development. These debates seek to allow candidates to appeal to young voters and express their plans to achieve youth development nationally.
The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015, provides a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet, now and into the future. At its heart are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, which are an urgent call for action by all countries, developed and developing in the global partnership. They recognize the ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand with strategies that improve health and education, reduce inequality, and spur economic growth, all while tackling climate change and working to preserve our oceans and forests. Sponsors for tonight: Government of Anguilla, Flow, Arenal, Titanium Audio Visual, Pink Mako, and Ashley's and Sons.
We will now set the rules for the proceedings that apply to the candidates. Firstly, each candidate will be given 3 minutes to give an opening statement. Candidates will then be given 5 questions from the ANYC on the Sustainable Development Goals. Each candidate will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to respond to the question. In this section, the candidate is only to refer to the moderator in his or her response. After the candidates have been given the opportunity to formally respond, you further have 2 minutes to rebut or to share further information on the question or topic asked, if so desired. Only in this rebuttal section are candidates allowed to respectfully refer to their opponents.
After the initial 5 questions, questions will be fielded from the virtual and live audience. Questions must be posed to all candidates. Questions with hidden agendas will not be asked. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to answer each question from the audience with a minute rebuttal, if so desired. After this segment is completed, candidates will be given 3 minutes to give a closing statement. If questions are not clearly, kindly ask the moderator to repeat the questions. If questions are not clearly asked, kindly ask the moderator to repeat the questions.
We all know that debates can often be entertaining and edifying, and it is not strange to encounter disagreeing or diverging thoughts. However, in order to judge whether we really and truly disagree with someone, it is important that we listen carefully to what they have to say. And as such, in order to enhance our listening experience this evening, we have a few more ground rules that apply specifically to the audience.
Rules to the audience. To ensure a debate of quality, we ask the audience to respect all candidates. Please place all phones on silent. The audience is not allowed to applaud or make any noise of any kind to interrupt the response of any candidate. Any audience member that insists on doing such will be asked to leave. No one is allowed to go down into the public library. Please be respectful.
All right, so we will get the ball rolling with...
Sorry, good
Yes,
evening.
sorry.
Question. I thought the candidates each had 5 minutes for opening statements.
In the ground rules, I'm saying that we have 3 minutes, but it is a go for 5 minutes, so.
Thank you.
Just before we start, let's get the timer up. And we will invite Mrs. Richardson-Hodge to make your opening statements.
Thank you. Good evening to everyone, to those of you present in this room, as well as those of you watching on social media and listening via radio. It is a pleasure to be here tonight. I wish to first congratulate and thank the Anguilla National Youth Council for arranging these series of debates, as it gives our young persons the opportunity to ask questions and be involved in the electoral process. Tonight's debate will prove to be an interesting one. Out of all of the debates, this is the only debate where both candidates have served a 5-year term in office. I will go further than that and also say that both candidates have held similar ministerial portfolios. And what it means is that the record of both candidates will likely feature in tonight's debate. Quote, a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all, end quote. This is the essence of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. I am proud to say that my ministry, on behalf of the government and the people of Anguilla, has been able to further a number of these SDGs. It is well known that education is a ladder out of poverty. But not only is it a way out of poverty, but education leads to decent work and economic growth and potentially eliminates hunger, reduces inequalities, and opens the way for persons to be able to afford to maintain good health and well-being. We have made great strides in education during the past 5 years for the benefit of our children and young persons, including establishing 3 new special education centers, one at Valley Primary School in 2015 and 2 at secondary, Dove 2 in 2015 and SEN Unit, which was opened just last year in 2019. From the training of our teachers as certificated teachers, the establishment of 2 state-of-the-art computer labs at Campus B, laptops for all teachers, the ones for primary teachers are on their way, additional CAPE and BTech subjects, such as vehicle technology, hospitality, work skills, and welding, all introduced in 2019 at the high school, and additional BTech programs to take place at the new branch of the Anguilla Community College, the reconstruction and upgrade of the primary schools and Campus A, to the supplementing of salaries of preschool teachers and training of preschool teachers at associate degree level at the community college. Education is on the move. But with all of the strides made over the past few years, there is still more work to be done. And because education is tied to labor, improving the workplace conditions has also been a priority these past 5 years. The passage of the Labor Relations Act 2019 forms the foundation for removing continuous short-term contracts for our Anguillians, creates the framework for a relevant understudy program and a severance pay scheme for persons made redundant, and finally recognizes the priority of qualified, skilled, and trained Anguillians in key positions. These all form part of SDGs 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, and 10. The focus of the Anguilla United Front government has and continues to be ensuring that our youth receive the training that they need from as early as preschool, straight through to the Anguilla Community College, the UE Open Campus, and beyond, into the workforce. My goal is a highly educated, skilled, and qualified population that can compete on the world stage. And so, what I have outlined is just the foundation, the original stepping stone for a labor framework that will form the basis for continued positive relationships between employer and employee here in Anguilla. After all, we all have to inhabit this beautiful little rock of ours together, and we have to work together to make it right. For SDGs 7, 9, and 13, my ministry has been able to play its role in affordable and clean energy, innovation and infrastructure, and climate action by ensuring that all of the new construction at our schools are outfitted to accommodate solar panels, thus potentially reducing the cost of electricity on these government buildings and freeing up these monies in the education budget so that they can be utilized elsewhere in our education budget. I wish to thank all persons who have worked hard over the last 5 years in my ministry, my permanent secretaries and heads of department, staff, teachers, and public servants in order to make these and other accomplishments a reality. Thank you, and I look forward to tonight's debate.
Thank you, Mrs. Richardson-Hodge. We now invite Mr. Roberts to make his opening statements.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. A pleasant good evening to all, and in particular to my people of District Number 2 and the Anguilla Progressive Movement family for being here tonight in full support of those, and for those who are viewing via social media and the World Wide Web, radio, following by radio, we bid you a pleasant good evening and welcome. To the organizers of this debate, the Anguilla National Youth Council, for ensuring that these debates occurred, I say thank you. Let me say a very special welcome to my esteemed opponent, Honorable Cora Richardson-Hodge. You passed up the opportunity in 2010, but I am pleased that you've chosen to be here present this evening for this debate. I've lived here all my life, and one who has had the opportunity to give and in return benefit from the rock from the past 50+ years, being a voice and a mover in a sustainable process. My many years of involvement in youth work has equipped me to address issues affecting the youth. My 19 years at the Anguilla Electricity Company has shown me that it is an asset which Anguillians must continue to own, and from there launch aggressively into renewable and affordable energy. I congratulate the staff of ANYC for the hard work that they've done, especially in the times of natural disasters. My short stint in the tourism sector with Zimmer Beach House and Spa LXR granted me an opportunity to see the industry at work and understand the concerns of our people by way of the wages earned and overall labor relations. The residents of District Number 2 afforded me the opportunity to represent their interests and by extension the wider Anguillian community in Parliament from February 2010 to 2015. Much was achieved during that difficult period after inheriting a treasury that was broke and people eagerly looking for greater opportunities. These are some of the experiences that have shaped my voice and made me a mover and shaker for sustainability. The above speaks of who I am. Hence, I am again delighted to be here and do look forward to an enlightening and informative debate session. This evening, we are all here for one common purpose, and that should be the enlightenment of our people through the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which were instituted in 2015 with a view of realizing the potential achievements by the year 2030. The fundamental purpose of these development goals are centered around creating peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. At the heart of these goals are an urgent call for action by all countries, developed and non-developed, to work on ending poverty and all forms of deprivation. In small island territories like Anguilla, this goal must be achieved by a dedicated focus on job creation, job security, establishing a living wage, constant upgrade in our standard of living. These goals must also be achieved through the overall healthcare sector system, making it affordable for all, and I would say completing retrofit to our education system to make our Anguillan children 21st century ready. This is the path we must take if we are to succeed in these goals, to create equal opportunity for all. Finally, we must care for our environment in order to meet the demands of sustainability in all areas. We must be the best stewards of our environment. Thus, as a government in waiting, the Anguilla Progressive Movement, under the esteemed leadership of Dr. Ellis Lorenzo Webster, we stand ready and committed not just to adhere to these goals, but also addressing them in the best interest of our people and our island overall sustainable development. We are ready to work together with you, the people of Anguilla, from all walks of life, and to put Anguilla back on the right track. I thank you. Pleasant good evening.
Thank you, candidates. We will now move into the prepared questions, and we will start off with question number 1. The order in which we will have the responses, we will start with Mr. Roberts, since Mrs. Cora Richardson-Hodge started with her address. So we will start with Mr. Roberts, and then we will go to Mrs. Richardson-Hodge. Jasani? We kindly ask at this time that you silence or turn off all cell phones. Thank you.
There's undoubtedly a relationship between taxes and the sustainability of our economy. What changes must be made to our current tax system to promote sustainable economic development? SDG 8 and 11. I'll repeat it again. There's undoubtedly a relationship between taxes and sustainability of our economy. What changes must be made to our current tax system to promote sustainable economic development? SDG 8 and 11.
Job creation.
It's been now 20 seconds.
Thank you very much. In order for us to, as you stated in your question, what changes must be made for our current tax system to promote sustainable economic development, that is critical because it all lends to overall job creation. And if it is that we have a society, that is weak in that particular area in terms of creating job opportunities for our people. With the various taxes and tax measures that are put in place, it only puts a strain on our overall economy, because it is that you're asking persons to pay taxes and they don't have the requisite wherewithal financially by way of jobs to meet these requested taxes that are put on them. If we realize that government's means whereby it earns its revenue is through, one, taxation, foreign direct investment, and through grant aid. But it is that if we as a society want to continue to see our people grow and our people develop and prosper, we have to be very careful that we are not really killing the golden goose that laid the egg, and that is creating job opportunities for our people by putting all these added taxes and putting all these pressures upon our people, whereby they cannot, for example, own a home in Anguilla. They cannot really have the basic necessities to survive in Anguilla because of these tax measures. So taxation has to go in tandem with job creation as it relates to these particular goals that we are putting forward here. As a party, the Anguilla Progressive Movement, our focus is on creation of jobs. Our focus is on reduction of taxes. As we would recall, even as we sit here this evening and we speak about taxation, during the period 2015-2020, we saw taxes increase of some 25% on vehicles and road use. We saw taxes increase by another about 15% as it relates to our communication levy. We see taxes increase about 100% as it relates to our properties. So rather than us continue to just kill our people through taxation, we have to look at other means and how it is that we can reduce costs and thus leaving monies within the pockets of our people so that we cannot just continue to just kill the situation, and which is right now dire as a result of lack of job creation opportunities.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Mrs. Richardson-Hodge.
Thank you. In order to adjust our current tax system, we would have to increase or broaden our tax base so that more persons are paying into the system. As it currently exists, the tax base is too small. But even before we talk about a broader tax base, we have to talk about expanding the number of industries that we currently have in Anguilla. Our major industry is the tourism sector currently, and we also have the financial services industry, but we know that that industry is a fledgling industry as it stands right now. And so we need to expand the number of opportunities by way of increasing the number of industries that we have in Anguilla, so that once we're able to create more industries and we have persons that can go into those areas, even if an industry or a particular sector, such as the tourism sector, for instance, right now, where we know that the tourism sector is closed, we can have other industries that will continue to operate and continue to exist in Anguilla, providing additional revenue and income and job opportunities for our people here in Anguilla. And so when we're talking about broadening the tax base, we must first talk about allowing or giving persons the opportunity to go into other areas of employment, and then that will allow us to not only broaden the tax base, but to increase revenue for the government. We all know that government runs based on revenue, and the revenue that comes in from the taxes is what allows the government to provide the necessary services for the people of Anguilla. And so at the end of the day, we do need to look at expanding our industry, and we need to look at broadening the tax base in that sense. Thank you.
We move on to question number 2, and just before...
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I think I have to
Terribly
respond.
sorry. Before we move on to the rebuttals, we just want to apologize for the lack of mentioning that you will have up to 1 minute to gather your thoughts before you start to answer the question. So we just want to apologize for that cutoff, the early cutoff. And so for the next question, we will ensure that you have the full time to prepare beforehand.
Thank you very much.
And we will go into the rebuttals, and that will be for a total of 2 minutes max.
Thank you again, Madam Moderator. Again, I just reiterate the point, and I think that my esteemed opponent made it as well. The fact that the whole tax base situation hinges on one thing. It hinges on job creation. Even if it is that we are diversifying various sectors in terms of the economy, it all boils back to taxes. It all boils back to the creation and opportunities for jobs within the market. And therefore, I will just simply say that job creation is the real driving force that will help us in terms of our tax situation.
Yes, thank you, Madam Moderator. On this occasion, I certainly do agree with my opponent in terms of the job creation, which is assessed and created as a result of increasing the tax base. So I believe that we will have answered in the same way, coming from two different directions. Thank you.
Thank you. We will be moving on to question number 2. District 2 contributes significantly to our local history and culture. What are key areas, historical or otherwise, in District 2 that can be developed to boost our national tourism product? How sustainable would this venture be? This is taken from SDG 9 and 11. To repeat, District 2 contributes significantly to our local history and culture. What are key areas, historical or otherwise, in District 2 that can be developed to boost our national tourism product? How sustainable would this venture be? SDG 1, 9, and 11. We will begin this time with Mrs. Cora Richardson-Hodge, and you are free to begin after a minute.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The District 2 district is a small district, and many persons may not realize that there are some items that can be developed in our district. One of them is, well, a number of them, we have various wells that many persons may not be aware that we have in our community that were constructed many years ago. Some are still usable, some have been covered up. We also have historical sites, and we're able to provide hikes around our ponds, creating boardwalks around our ponds as well. It has to be tied in with our tourism product, and through the tourism board and the tourism plans that would be created, we'd have to include District 2 sites, historical walks, etc., on our list of things that our visitors to Anguilla can embark on. And so there is a possibility they would have to be developed. If they are on private lands, we'd have to look at some sort of arrangement with our private land owners, as well as ensuring that we're able to make it feasible and sustainable in the long run. We also have to ensure, while we're developing those areas, that we do so in a sustainable way, that we do not damage the product, the very product that we are highlighting for our tourists. Thank you.
Madam Moderator, as one who have lived in the district for the last 50 plus years, and the question stems to heritage, tourism, and as it relates to our sites, I bring to your attention the Fort Hill and Sandy Hill, which is just sitting there dormant right now. There is need for us to develop the Fort Hill into what I would consider to be a museum, and it is sitting on an ideal height and location that we can actually put to use rather than as it is now sitting there as basically a storage area. It's a lot of rich history there, and this can complement our tourism plant. I want to secondly as well, Madam Moderator, as one who have lived in the district for 50 plus years, to bring to your attention that the St. Augustine's Anglican Church, the old Anglican Church, was a part of a sugar estate. And there's the ruins of that sugar estate that lies to the back of the church, leading to a well. And I'm saying that that particular area, again, is an area that needs to be developed. And even, I'm sure that there are persons even within the district and outside even of the district who are not really familiar with that. This, again, can add to our product. And lastly, I want to bring to your attention, Madam Moderator, that there is a venture that Teacher George had put in place for the Miami Bay area called Heritage Village. The overall idea was to bring persons to the eastern end of the island. And therefore, this is a site that myself, working with the Anguilla Progressive Movement team, will assist, because we believe that green spaces are critical as well, and we believe as well that the heritage site, that there is potential. And as it relates to ponds, there are no ponds in District Number 2 that I know about that we use right now as trails. But I'm saying that you have the likes of Long Pond that is in District 2 that we can utilize for something of that nature down the road. So there's great potential in District Number 2 as it relates, like I said, to the Fort Hill site, which can be utilized and created into a picturesque site and a green space site as well. And it's a key location for persons even overlooking Sandy Hill Bay and the surrounding areas. So these particular three, as you've asked for, I think would be critical in us moving forward and adding to our tourism plant. Thank you very much.
We'll now give you a bit of time to prepare for your rebuttal. And we would have Mrs. Richardson-Hodge start off when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. One of the questions that I do not believe that we would have truly answered would have been, how sustainable would the venture be? And the difficulty, we know any number of heritage sites that we currently have across the landscape of Anguilla, not just necessarily in District 2, where we have been able to utilize it, but we have found as well that the sustainability of it is not necessarily something that could be continued or maintained. I also look at the museum that we currently have by Mr. Caldwell Petty on the eastern end of the island. And it is a beautifully outfitted museum with many artifacts that he, as a historian, would have collected over the years. And the question to ask is whether they would necessarily require two museums within the space of, it's just right down the road from each other. And at the end of the day, what we need to look at is diversifying the products that we currently have and not necessarily utilizing the same idea and in a different location. And so the sustainability in any of these ideas would have to be looked at, certainly to ensure that it's something that can be maintained. It would have to be, I would imagine, under the auspices of the Anguilla National Trust or the tourism department in order to push these ventures and ensure that they continue to be maintained. Thank you.
Madam Moderator, I will simply say that there's never enough. There's never enough. And if it is that we are interested in seeing the development of our districts, we will never seek to want to come short or fall for less or for little. The museum is in District Number 1. That's the first thing. And the museum to which I referred to for this Fort Hill area is not the same setup or operation. The Fort Hill takes on its own unique features. Also, when it speaks about sustainability and that things fall within the cracks, I do not again accept that, because we have to empower our people. We have to ensure that we're giving our people the requisite tools and financial assistance and wherewithal to be able to see these things grow and develop. And I believe that if it is that we are serious about our districts and serious about the upliftment of our people, because this particular question deals with Sustainable Development Goal 1, 9, and 11. 1 speaks to no poverty. 9 speaks to innovation and infrastructure. And 11 speaks to the sustainable cities and communities. And therefore, we have to do all in our power to ensure that we bring about what is required for the well-being of our people. And I'm saying that green spaces is critical. I'm saying that we should never find or try to be short in offering what it is that our people so truly desire. And that is a better standard of life. And District 2 deserves a better standard of life. And hence, I'm here this evening.
Thank you, candidates. At this juncture, I would like to remind the audience to please be respectful as candidates are giving both their prepared responses and their rebuttals. I would also like to take this opportunity to ask all audience members who may not have had the opportunity to turn off or silence their cell phones to do so now, please. We will move on to question number 3. And we will start off with Mr. Roberts giving the answer first. Jasani?
Anguilla generally receives the highest wages in the Eastern Caribbean. What are the setbacks of implementing a minimum wage? What steps can the government take to overcome these challenges? I will repeat. Anguilla generally receives the highest wages in the Eastern Caribbean. What are the setbacks of implementing a minimum wage? What steps can the government take to overcome these challenges? This comes from SDG 1, 2, 3, 8, and 11. You have 1 minute to pray if you desire.
Mr. Moderator, in the interest of time, we will continue. I'm ready. So I think the question is to me, right? Question number 3. Yeah? Yeah. As it relates to the minimum wage situation, this has been a political football for many, many years under many administrations, including the administration which I was a part of. And I say a political football from the standpoint that we have tried to encourage several committees, minimum wage committees, to be established. And what you see happening is that it continues to fall along the wayside. What we need to understand is how the committees are established, the makeup of the committees. And there's always some contention as it relates to one party versus the other party, as to trying to bridge that gap that will benefit everyone at the end of the day. I'm happy to say that I know Mr. Willis Hodge was a part of one of those committees in the day. And he can, back me up on this, that it was difficult. Under the administration 2010-2015, we established, I think it was 2 committees that we put in place. One was chaired by Lawyer Lolita Davis-Eiffel. And up to now, it was difficult for us at a point in time to get the report from that particular committee. And another committee was put in place. But again, if it is that we are serious about working in the interests of our people, our workers, we have to take this and move seriously with it. Because I know that this is an area that can help, and it's an area that I am committed with the rest of my team, the Anguilla Progressive Movement team, to address going forward the minimum wage situation. It's an ongoing cry. It's an ongoing cry, and it just has not started yesterday. It started under the Anguilla United Front administration. It started with the Anguilla Democratic Party being around. It started when you had the ANYC party around. Minimum wage has always been out there. We don't have it in place now, hence it has been an ongoing issue that needs to be addressed. And I support that it needs to be addressed going forward.
Ms. Richardson-Hodge.
Thank you. In terms of the first statement, Anguilla generally receives the highest wages in the Eastern Caribbean. I am not familiar with that actually being the case. And I do not have the benefit of the research to make that, to agree with that statement. In fact, I actually don't think that applies generally. I am aware in certain sectors that we have persons making about $3 an hour, $3 an hour. And so I don't think that that could be generally said to be one of the highest wages in the Eastern Caribbean. In addition, so in terms of the highest wages, I'm not sure if that's the case. I believe that there are major variations depending on the job position. But when you look, for instance, at the general manager of a hotel, his salary scale, his or her salary scale would be on a completely different range than a person who is working as a person cleaning one of the hotels, a house person. And so it may be the case that it is adjusted not in the way that it ought to be. But in terms of the setbacks implementing a minimum wage, one of the issues is that we do not have the statistics that we need. Across the island, we have various aspects of our tourism products, as I mentioned, that have various wages. The steps to overcome is the Labor Relations Act, which was actually changed. Under our original labor law, the minimum wage was actually set out in the law, but it only applied based on sector. When we passed the Labor Relations Act in January of 2019, we made provision for minimum wage to apply not only based on sector, but across the island. We know, for instance, in the case of BVI, Cayman, and Turks and Caicos, they have one minimum wage that applies across the sector. So prior to that law coming in place in January of 2019, applying a minimum wage based on one flat minimum wage would not have been possible. And it may be that previous administrations would have overlooked the necessity of amending the labor law so that we could properly deal with the minimum wage in that fashion. The other issue is that we have to do it properly when we set up our committees. A lot of times it's based on political considerations. It has to be across the board based on what persons can bring to the table. We need to involve expert assistance. We have already, under this administration, engaged the International Labour Organization, the ILO, to assist us, and they also assisted the other British overseas territories in coming up with a minimum wage. And so the major challenges would be getting it right, as opposed to rushing to say that you set up a minimum wage committee for the sake of setting up a minimum wage committee without having the foundation set. Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move on to rebuttals. You have 2 minutes and 1 minute to prepare if you desire. We'll start with Ms. Roberts. Mr.
Okay.
Roberts.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm happy that my esteemed opponent, Honorable Cora Richardson-Hodge, would indicate that there's no need to rush because, you know, on the political campaign in 2015, it was the mantra of the Anguilla United Front administration to give them an opportunity to lead this country because the minimum wage is one of the things that they will indeed make good for the people of Anguilla. I'm pleased to have with me this evening the Labor Relations Act, in which it is just basically stated in here. But again, I'm also happy to note that the minister, recognizing the difference being out of office and in office, that there are challenges. And the situation with the minimum wage has to do simply with the fact too of getting committees and persons who will be willing to work on these committees and understand the need to move this forward in the best interest of Anguilla, not in the best interest of one's self, taking it from the standpoint of the employee or the employer. There will always be some differences, but we need to be able to narrow that gap to create what is best for our workers, for our employees. And this is the direction in which we ought to go. So I think, again, that I totally would agree that these are some of the challenges. And I recognize the challenges. And I, too, am committed with my team under the leadership of Dr. Ellis Lorenzo Webster to work in the best interest of our people on moving this minimum wage forward. Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you. In fact, Madam Moderator, I applaud my opponent for having a copy of the Labor Relations Act so that he can refer to it. I do not have a copy this evening, but I do not need to because I know what is in it, having prepared it myself. The issue is not necessarily the minimum wage itself. What has happened over the years is that when we've had administrations, such as the previous administration, that was so interested in passing or saying that they were putting together a minimum wage committee, that they had 2 minimum wage committees in the space of 5 years. That should tell you that something had to have been definitely wrong, intrinsically wrong with the setting up of the committees, and it must mean that the committees were not set up in the way that they ought to have been set up, and that is outside of the political interference. That is without reference to who political parties or who the persons are that support which political parties, but getting appropriate persons on each of those committees that can do the job and do it properly. But I will also again highlight that it is difficult to be able to provide that information or to come to a conclusion without having expert assistance. And that is why when you want to do something right, you don't rush and set up 2 different committees, but you take the time. The time may not be there to do everything. If you would recall, the minimum wage the Labor Relations Act was passed in January of 2019. And going into a political season in 2019, 2020, it would have been folly on our part to talk about setting up a minimum wage when we were about to go into the heat of a campaign. And so while it is that we would have wanted to have set up a minimum wage committee and come to a conclusion, it simply would not have been possible and it would not have been reasonable to be able to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Question 4. What is the relationship, if any? One moment, please. We apologize. We'll read this question here. Anguilla has remained a mono economy. What are practical, innovative ways to change this dilemma while still promoting green living? Anguilla has remained a mono economy. What are practical, innovative ways to change this dilemma while still promoting green living? This touches on SDGs 8, 9, 11, 13, and 14. This round, we will begin with Mrs. Cora Richardson-Hodge, and you will have some time to prepare or begin as you wish.
Thank you. For the sake of clarification, could you explain what you refer to as mono economy?
Can we get some clarification on that question, please, Mr. President? So our president has clarified that mono economy is referring to the fact that we are driven by one main industry here in Anguilla. Please give the candidates some time to prepare in quiet. Thank you. We now invite you to make your response.
Thank you. In answer to the question in terms of mono economy, meaning based on, mostly based on the tourism industry, as I mentioned earlier, we do have to look at developing other industries here in Anguilla. On these platforms, during these debates, I've heard continuously the talk about agriculture and fishing. And that still pertains in terms of promoting green living. And we know that that can be done because in terms of agriculture, we currently have a project that is in the works where we're looking at greenhouses and the establishment of greenhouses. And the reason for that is because we know with global warming, with climate change, with all of these issues that are taking place with our soil and with the limited nature of soil that we have agricultural land here in Anguilla, we have to look at ways in which we can sustain ourselves. And dealing with the greenhouse aspect of agriculture will allow us to be able to go into that area. We can utilize solar energy. We can utilize wind turbines to be able to continue into that area. The project is something that we are looking at moving forward on. We already had a consultant that came into Anguilla and already provided a model greenhouse. And so it is simply a matter, in a real way, being able to promote the greenhouse structure and utilizing it as a base or a model for moving forward. We've also talked about fishing in our 200 nautical miles. It is also another main way in which we can utilize our local resources and at the same time still promote our green living. The fishing industry, we have persons already that are already looking at utilizing our 200 nautical miles fishing out in those areas, and we want to be able to continue to encourage those persons and all Anguillians, in fact, to go into that area. To be able to fully develop, I am of the view that we would need additional resources and assistance to be able to do so. Now, there are other countries that have done the same thing where they've gotten assistance to be able to go into that area and develop the fishing industry. And we do have our natural resources that we can look to. Another area that we can look to as well is renewable energy. And even in terms of the existing tourism product that we have, we can look at transforming Anguilla into a true renewable energy island where we're utilizing our hotels, our schools, our government offices can be adjusted and retrofitted to take into account renewable energy and to be able to promote Anguilla as a renewable island. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. The question has to do with what are practical innovative ways to change the dilemma while promoting green living. I know that we have been, for the past 2 weeks practically, through these debates, speaking heavily about agriculture and fishing, because as it relates to tourism, whatever it is, that is the central hub. Everything else feeds into tourism. And therefore, everything else that we do is going to have the linkages with tourism. However we decide to diversify, it is still going to link to the main umbrella tourism. And therefore, I believe that what we need to be doing in the area of agriculture is to use that as a marketing tool to leverage what we can offer here to our guests who are coming to our shores. I recall the likes of Cuisinart, which had that plant there that was actually feeding the guests. This is an area that we need to look at in terms of all our hotels should be striving for this sort of food security. Agriculture, when we speak about it, we need to just not think mainly about just going with a hoe and a pick and chop in the ground, but looking at other ways in which we can diversify the agriculture, using modern technologies and stuff to help feed and channel this particular industry. As it relates to fishing, again, that is an area that we have been talking about throughout the past 2 weeks, and even before that. But again, these are things that are not going to happen just overnight. It will require us to sit down and have a real sustainable plan in terms of moving forward. We have the resources at our fingertips. It is for us to put our people, get our people together, be apolitical on these issues, and look at what is best for our country in terms of moving forward. Again, we have to our disposal as well the likes of the fountain in Shoal Bay. And there is nothing that has been done, so to speak, with the fountain to help to complement our tourism plant. This needs to be addressed. And this is something that we can use. Again, health tourism is another area that we speak about, but there's a lot that can be done in this particular area in terms of helping with the tourism plant. So basically, these are some of the things that I think are important for us to look at as we forge ahead.
Thank you. And just a reminder, we have 2 minutes max for rebuttals. So when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. On this, I believe that my opponent and I agree. There's not much difference in terms of the responses. However, I will go on to add that in my answer, I do not want to neglect the fact that we currently do have a number of projects that are currently tourism projects that are currently utilizing solar energy. And a number of them include Solaire and Frangipani, and so we want to continue, and Cuisinart, and so we want to continue to encourage the solar energy. There's currently, under this administration, we would have made solar panels duty-free, and we need to continue to move Anguilla into the direction of renewable energy, where we can continue to utilize those resources and reduce the reliance on fossil fuels. Thank you.
Madam Moderator, sorry. I would simply like to add here that I'm quite happy to hear my esteemed opponent speak so highly about renewables and about moving to in that venture, because it is my opponent team who is well bent on selling our lone utility plant, ANYC. And we cannot afford ANYC to be sold, Madam Moderator. What we need to do is to work in partnership with ANYC to seek renewable means whereby to provide electricity to our people, thus reducing the cost to our people and holding on to that golden goose that we have. So in terms of renewables, yes, it is critical, but it is a bit hypocritical, I must say, to speak about it on one hand, but at the next hand, you are supporting the sale of this entity. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. At this
Sorry,
juncture,
Madam Moderator, if I may ask.
Sorry.
There seems to...
Is there a period for rebuttal? I think that's the end of the rebuttal for this.
I'm not asking for a rebuttal,
I'll
so if you
field
would
the
allow me
question.
to ask the question. Madam
Excuse
Moderator.
me, please. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may, In the rebuttal that was given by my opponent, there seems to have been misinformation that would have been relayed.
Madam Moderator,
And I would
with all
ask
respect,
on
with
the
all
next
respect, Madam
question-
Moderator,
I would ask
all respect,
Please,
On the-
excuse me.
with all respect,
We need to,
That's not the
we
way the
need to
the process will
listen to each other. With respect, I will ask you to let the candidate finish.
hello? That never happened before, and it will not happen this evening.
It's all right.
I'm sorry, Ms. Hodge, we have to move on to the next question.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, at this juncture, I'd like to remind the audience that you do have opportunity to submit questions that can be fielded to the candidates. So at this time, if anyone is interested in submitting questions, please indicate to the members of the Anguilla National Youth Council to our left. They are wearing blue. We will be moving on to the final question of the evening before we get into virtual and live audience questions. This question, we will have Mr. Roberts start us off with the responses. Question 5 reads, with resources being limited in Anguilla, funds must be allocated to priority areas. If elected, what infrastructural development should funds be prioritized towards to boost sustainable national development? With resources being limited in Anguilla, funds must be allocated to priority areas. If elected, what infrastructural development should funds be prioritized towards to boost sustainable national development? This is taken from SDG 11. Again, we ask the audience to respectfully remain quiet while candidates prepare their responses.
Madam Moderator, thank you very much. I'm of the view that not when, not if, but when elected, that port development is the key area for us to focus our funding. Because without a proper port infrastructure put in place, that is sea and airport development I'm speaking about, an island remains in limbo. We sit here in Anguilla and we depend on St. Martin as our main gateway for international travel to our shores by air. We sit here and we depend on St. Martin as well for our shipping in terms of our gateway to Anguilla, outside of the likes of Tropical from the US and the other carriers. So therefore, we have to look at how it is that we can develop our own infrastructure here that will take us, to the next 50 plus years. What you see happening in Sanderground today is a travesty. It is the wrong location for that port development. It also has its drawbacks as it relates to its impact on the overall environment. And I am concerned, Madam Moderator, even with the development for that new jetty in Sanderground, that Sanderground itself, in the next 20 years, with all what is happening in terms of the dredging and stuff that's taking place, that we may not see the Sanderground that we see there today. We may be seeing just a mere sand bank, or we may just be seeing some structures that are just within the waters. But I'm going to simply say that I strongly believe that port development is critical to our economic growth and development. and air and seaport access must be the areas in which we ought to put the necessary resources going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There are a number of infrastructural developments I would highlight. The first one for me is the continuation and finalization of our Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School in terms of an infrastructural development. And the reason why I say that is because it is so critical to our children. On the original plan, we had intended to develop the Campus B as well, but at a cost of $10 million US, we were unable to develop Campus B, and so because of that, we've limited the redevelopment to Campus A. But I envision seeing the entire campus, a campus for education in one location where the Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School is currently being built. It is technically not what you consider infrastructural development, but for me, I consider it in terms of being a critical aspect of development for our children in Anguilla, and so I definitely want to put that forward in terms of being a primary and very critical aspect of our development, because it's the development of our youth, and it is the training ground for our children to go out into the working world, and so we want to ensure that that is developed. The other two areas would be the airport development. We've seen after Hurricane Irma where Anguilla would have recovered much earlier than our brothers and sisters, our neighboring islands. And as a result of that, even though we were ready to reopen technically or to allow persons to come in, we had to find creative ways for persons to come in. I believe that the major area was through St. Kitts at one point in time because we could not get directly into St. Martin. And in relation to the COVID as well, we see ourselves in a position where, as a result of the hard work of this Anguilla United Front government, and in collaboration with our health officials and our Minister of Health, who I see has joined us this evening, Anguilla has been able to announce that it is COVID-free, and in fact, just yesterday, day before yesterday, we were recognized internationally, and our status has moved from sporadic cases to no cases. And so now we see where Anguilla is in a prime position to take advantage of reopening our tourism product, doing things in a certain way to be able to enhance our economy, but we have not, because of the fact that we do not have our airport infrastructure, the expansion of our airport. We are limited or we're reliant on other countries. We also need a deep harbor port because we know as well that the cost of shipping, etc., when they have to go into St. Martin and transition over to Anguilla, that there is an additional cost. And so the cost of shipping into Anguilla is thought to be higher than the cost of going into St. Martin because of the lack of a deep harbor area for us here in Anguilla. Thank you.
Thank you. We now invite rebuttals.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. I know that my esteemed opponent, the Minister of Education, is keen to see the establishment and development of the Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School, which I totally support her on. But the question speaks specifically to, if elected, what infrastructure development, and hence I move straight to the port development aspect. In terms of being critical for us moving forward. In terms of the COVID discussion that took place as part of the presentation, I want to, on the whole subject of port development, which I speak to and alluded to, I want to say a hearty thank you as well to the government and people of both French and Dutch St. Martin for taking the initiatives which they took in closing the French side of St. Martin very early, and then the Dutch side for closing their section very early, which by extension created our government to take some decisions here. There may be a different view to that, but I just want to simply say that I'm happy that at least where we're at today is a comfortable place for all of us in Anguilla. Thank you.
Thank you. It is actually very painful to hear when persons cannot give due credit where credit is due and try to allocate instead the fact that ports in other countries closed, and that was what prompted Anguilla to close, and that is definitely and totally far from the truth. But I can understand in the political season that...
Please, I'm sorry to have to interrupt. We will give you back the time to reclaim. Please, this is quite frankly very disheartening. We do not condone the interruption of our candidates while they're speaking. The young people have put this on so that we may be able to listen and learn from our elders. And right now, our elders are not modeling the kind of behavior that we should be learning. So I ask once again that we give respect to all of our candidates and allow them to speak without interruption. You may.
Thank you. As I was saying, it's actually disheartening, but I understand that in the heat of the political campaign, the persons who would be opposing the Anguilla United Front would not want to give any sort of recognition to the hard work that went into Anguilla being where it is today. We made our decision to close very early, back in March of this year, and it has augured well. We are also in the process of bringing persons back, repatriating our Anguillians, and we're doing it in a careful, considered way. We've also been able to announce that we have no cases. There was a report that just came out saying that of all the persons that have come back, they've all been tested and tested negative. And so I do congratulate, if other persons don't want to, the Anguilla United Front for the hard work that they have been doing. In terms of infrastructure, I also want to make mention of one additional thing. ANYC considered to be an infrastructural development as well. It is, and I don't want persons to leave tonight with the mistaken belief that ANYC is being sold by government. It is inaccurate and a misrepresentation. The government was looking at selling the shares, the government shares in ANYC, and so ANYC is a private company. There are private individuals that own the shares in ANYC as well as government. And so the intention was to sell only the government shares in ANYC, and it will continue to remain a private company. Government of Anguilla, the Anguilla United Front, has no intention of selling ANYC because ANYC is a private company. And so I would like all that are here and listening to the song of my voice to understand the misrepresentations that are being made tonight are not accurate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. This concludes the pre-prepared questions round. We will be moving into the virtual and live audience questions. And just to recap, questions will be fielded from the virtual and live audience. Questions must be posed to all candidates. Questions with any hidden agendas or that may be contentious or confrontational will not be asked. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes, so we have less time this round. 2 minutes to answer each question from the audience with a minute rebuttal, a minute maximum. And then after this segment, we will move into closing statements. So at this time, we will be inviting the council members with any questions from the audience. And as we await any additional questions, we do have one right here.
What What is the relationship, if any, between poverty and quality education? I repeat. What is the relationship, if any, between poverty and quality education? Ms. Richardson Hodge, please.
Thank you. I would have indicated in my opening statement that education is the ladder out of poverty. And what I meant when I said that is that we, throughout the world, where we would have persons that are living in poverty, or even just, if you're not considered to be living in poverty, you're still unable to make ends meet. And I consider that to be a level of poverty as well. When we educate ourselves, we're able to climb out of that because education allows us to open the doors of opportunity for us. And so it gives us the opportunity to be hired and based on the skills and the qualifications that you have. And it's something that means a lot. It's important to me because that is my goal. That is the Anguilla United Front's goal for the people of Anguilla, to move us into an area where we are a highly skilled, qualified population. And with a highly skilled, qualified population, we are able to progress ourselves, to progress our families, to take up larger or greater positions in various aspects, and to be able to move up the ladder of success. And so no matter where we start in life, whether we are in a middle class bracket or poor bracket, etc., once we educate ourselves and we're able to advance ourselves through our education, then we will see that our lives and our livelihoods start to improve. And in terms of what is available in Anguilla, we have the Anguilla Community College, we have the UE Open Campus, we also have the extension for the Anguilla Community College, which is going into the vocational education aspect, and that is currently being built in District 2. It's under construction, and we'll be able to offer more BTEC classes at that branch of the community college. And so I look forward to continuing another term with the Anguilla United Front to continue the hard work that we've already started. Thank you.
You can repeat the question.
The question again, what is the relationship, if any, between poverty and a quality education?
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Education is key. We all agree. Poverty is real. I think we all agree, with the exception of the Minister of Infrastructure, who stayed at this podium some night ago and indicated to you, beautiful audience, and the people of Anguilla and those listening for the field, that there was no poverty in Anguilla. Contrary to that, Madam Moderator, as I journey throughout the length and breadth of this country, there are pockets of poverty. What we need to do is to create an atmosphere in which we can create job opportunities for our people, opportunities where with that it comes a higher level of education, because they are now in a better position. They're in a better position once you provide the jobs to move from that level where they're at in terms of not being able to make means to be able to sustain themselves, and at the same time benefit from all the educational opportunities that are out there. So there is a correlation, and that you just can't leave one out without the other. And the reality is in Anguilla, as we speak about the education aspect, and we go back to the point where ANYC has almost 70+% in the share ownership, and we're talking about giving up the shares of ANYC or selling the shares of ANYC, it is indirect a sale of the Anguilla Electricity Company. Thank you very much.
At this juncture, we invite any rebuttals or further information on the question asked. What is the relationship, if any, between poverty and a quality education?
Thank you. Unfortunately, we have no statistics or very little statistics in terms of the extent of poverty here in Anguilla. And we do know when we go around through our communities, when we talk to our individuals, we know the persons that aren't doing well. We know. We also know that Anguillans are very proud people. And so it's very difficult to get statistics and that sort of data so that we can understand exactly how we are faring here in Anguilla in terms of poverty levels. But at the end of the day, we all do what we can to be able to assist in those areas. Now, in terms of job opportunities, with education comes greater opportunities and the ability to pull ourselves out even further out of poverty. And in relation to, as a rebuttal in relation to ANYC, there is a big distinction between selling ANYC shares as represented versus selling government shares in ANYC. Thank you.
Yeah.
Please allow silence for Mr. Roberts' rebuttal.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. We can go back and forth on this. The bottom line is that the government of Anguilla intention is to sell the Anguilla Electricity Company. And the shares that the government has are the people's shares, and ANYC is the people's company. So we can decide however we want to dance around it. The bottom line is that that is the ultimate goal of the Anguilla United Front administration. When we speak about poverty and that the fact that we do not have statistics and we cannot go around, in 2007, if my memory serves me right, the district which both my esteemed opponent and myself comes from was rated to be the highest as it relates to poverty in Anguilla. And if we are serious about identifying where poverty is, apart from us walking the districts now to seek a vote, we will know that we will implement and give the power to our people in government to go around and collect the necessary data and not hide under the disguise that Anguillan people are proud. We can actually, sorry, thank you.
Thank you. We have more fielded questions from the audience. And so for our second audience question, where we'll have Mr. Roberts start us off. What are your future plans moving onwards for District 2 if elected to office on June 29th? What are your future plans moving onward for District 2 if elected to office June 29th?
Thank you very much. I just want to bring to the attention of the residents of District Number 2, again, that not if, but when I'm elected in a matter of 10 days' time, that District 2 can stand assured that Sandy Hill Beach will be turned into a tourism development beach for the purpose of entrepreneurship, where persons within our community can establish some beach huts and create some business ventures through the water sports, etc. Because our beach is a beach that is being utilized heavily. Also, infrastructure is key in District Number 2, a number of poor road infrastructure development that needs to be corrected, and finally, a community center that has to be put in place there in the district. Sorry. I had an issue with the timing that was showing here. So 30 seconds and I'm seeing a minute. So let me just quickly go back to the fact that Sandy Hill Beach, I want to utilize that for entrepreneurship ventures for the people of the district, and I have to speak to the landowners within that community to ensure that we get that. Secondly, I would like for us to look at the infrastructure development in the area. There are a number of roads in the area that needs attention, and I'm not going to stay here this evening and say that we will do all the roads, but it is important that we address some of these roads within the district. And I think it's important as well to open up a constituency office a constituency office so that the people of my district can have an ear and an opportunity to meet with me and to share their views and concerns that are affecting the district on a regular basis. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Richardson-Hodge, what are your future plans moving onward for District 2 if elected to office June 29th?
Thank you. So we currently do have an existing community center in Easton and in District 2, and that was the Hope Center that was established in 2011. And the reason why that was established was as a result of the cries from the people in the district prior to that date that they wanted a community center for their children to attend, to provide courses for adults, young people, etc. The center provides a number of courses. It ranges from an average between 25 up to 55 students at any one time. We provide afternoon classes, homework assistance, etc. We want to be able to expand the course offerings as well. We do offer EDPM and some other courses for our high school students. And so there are plans that in terms of expanding the Hope Center. One of those would be the construction of a playground as well. And that's one of the cries as well that I've heard from the people in the district, that there's nowhere for us to be able to take our children, our families, and have gatherings. In fact, myself with my two young girls, when we have to find somewhere to take our bikes outside of the district because we simply don't have anywhere to be able to ride our bikes within the district. I would also want to look at creating a basketball facility and tennis court. We do have one which the Hope Center again assisted in redeveloping, and that was in the East End, adjoining the Morris Vanderbilt Primary School. But again, we would want to have somewhere probably in the Sandy Hill district or in the Deep Waters area that would be solidly within the District 2 community for the young people of District 2. And lastly but not least as well, infrastructure. Many of our roads, our Badcock's Pond Road, the Sandy Hill Road, and some of our roads leading to our private homes in desperate need of attention and repair. And so I would hope that on my re-election, and I fully expect that we would be able to get the funds to be able to do so. Thank you.
We will open the floor for rebuttal or further information on your response. 1 minute, thanks.
1 minute. Thank you. I just want to say that it's interesting that my esteemed opponent will mention about the road infrastructure in District Number 2, when in actual fact I've been able to traverse a number of those roads to different individuals who indicated to me on the visit of my esteemed opponent, promised them that something will be done. And we recall that there were some monies that were allocated for road development. And the minister indicated that she made several requests to the Minister of Works to have something done in her district, but nothing was done. She basically apologized for that on one of her radio programs. But I'm simply saying that we have to be serious about our stewardship and our call for service. And I think that at least one of those roads at least should have been addressed during that 5-year period, since there were monies that were actually allocated for such. Bearing in mind that we left some $33 million in reserves, $6.5 million in surplus before we left office in 2015. So basically, there is need for attention in these particular areas going forward. Thank you.
The infrastructure, roads is important, but it is not the only thing that makes a representative in the district. We also need to look at the needs of our young people, of our elderly. I also neglected to mention that under Hope Center, we were able to establish the AXA Cares Food Bank, which has been ongoing since 2011 as well. And so under the initiatives where myself and other team members have been able to spearhead, we've been able to look at the full spectrum of being able to provide for our community separate and apart from the infrastructure roads, which I indicated before would fall mainly under the MICU, the infrastructure. Sandy Hill Beach is a private beach. I'm not sure how we can develop a private beach without the consent of the persons, and so it seems to me to be another misleading or misrepresentation without having confirmation. You cannot have a surplus if you have bills that are owed and you haven't paid it. Then it's simply monies that haven't been paid that in order to say you have a surplus. Thank you.
At this juncture, we would like to remind the audience to please allow the candidates to deliver their responses with a respectful silence. Please allow the candidates to deliver their responses with a respectful silence.
Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Kindly be respectful. The next time you're not respectful, you would be asked to leave. Leave, everyone.
We will be forging on with our third question. And at this point, Mrs. Richardson Hodge will have the first response.
What is the plan for pension plans for the private sector if elected? What is the plan for pension plans for the private sector if elected? Mr. Richardson Hodge. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. When we first looked at the Labor Relations Act, we wanted to consider including pension plans for the private sector at that point in time. But we also had looked at the possibility of including insurance. But in recognizing that a lot of the resistance from the business sector, and the biggest concern coming out of Hurricane Irma, was that the businesses did not have the financial wherewithal to be able to put in place pension plans or insurance or additional monetary obligations at that point in time. It was decided that we'd have to phase in the concept of pension plans for the private sector as well as mandatory insurance. And so what we were able to provide would have been what persons in Anguilla had been crying about for many years, and that would be severance pay in the event they're made redundant after working for any number of years in the industry. And what we're also looking at, and there was a discussion that has recently been held that we need to explore, is that while it is some persons in the hotel sector in particular have indicated that there may be a possibility of them willing to be able to utilize the 3%. Now, on their service charge, they don't pay stabilization, the interim stabilization levy, and what some of them have indicated, in light of the fact that the tourist sector is the largest sector in Anguilla, in light of the fact that when things go south, that they're the ones more likely to be affected in terms of accessing the temporary unemployment benefit program that we've put in place twice now, that they would like to look at the possibility of utilizing 3% from their service charge to go towards some sort of plan or unemployment benefit program for themselves. And so it is interesting that those kinds of discussions are taking place through the private sector themselves in terms of how they're able to look forward. The other consideration to that as well is they're looking at the possibility of that money that they set aside forming part of a pension plan in the future. Thank you.
Repeat. Can you repeat, please?
What are the plans for pension plans for the private sector if elected?
Yeah.
What are the plans for pension plans for the private sector if elected?
Thank you. It's interesting that that question should come forward, because I take into consideration this evening that as we sit here, that there were some of our hard-working individuals in our indigenous banks, the National Bank of Anguilla and the Caribbean Commercial Bank of Anguilla, who paid into a pension plan, and today they do not know what has happened to their pensions. And I would like to probably ask my esteemed opponent if in any way did she have anything to do with the National Bank of Anguilla and the Caribbean Commercial Bank of Anguilla pensions being lumped into one pool, whereas the Caribbean Commercial Bank pension funds were insured. Hence, the difficulty we may be at to date is a question that I put forward. Going forward, we have to look at pensions across the board for the entire private sector, but it has to be done not, again, to use my opponent's words, not in a rush, but it must be methodically assessed and look at the best ways forward that will be the benefit of all stakeholders involved. And Madam Moderator, I don't like to leave the opportunities, but I just must indicate that it's strange that my opponent would say there is nothing called a surplus, when in actual fact we heard from the Anguilla United Front administration just the other day that they had a $20 million surplus, and they still have bills that are outstanding and owed on behalf of the people of Anguilla. I find that, and as I spoke about the beach in Sandy Hill, I did indicate that we have to speak to the landowners. So someone somewhere along the line may have missed that, but that was indicated. But I will not allow these opportunities to go by without making the corrections. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will invite further comments or rebuttal. 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. It's interesting that my opponent has raised the issue of pension plan for the banks, because when under the administration that he was a part of, the AUM in 2013, when they called ECCB to come in to take over conservatorship of the two banks, they made no provision for pension of the employees at that point in time. In fact, they had never even considered that the employees would suffer if they called in the ECCB in the manner in which they did. Further, in relation to the question that has been asked about whether I had anything to do with the pensions being lumped together, I am not sure what the question is, but I would ask, or respectfully suggest, that he can ask the member of his party who was on the board of NBA at the time that the ECCB came in, because he may have more information than I would. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear from... Please allow Mr. Roberts to make his rebuttal or further comments. Thank you. Mr. Roberts, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. It's a very interesting, and you know, this debate, I think it's useful because it takes us from the political rostrum where we can speak rubbish and come here and be civil, so to speak, this evening. And I just want to say, Madam Moderator, that while it is the question has been asked of me to ask a member of my party who was part of the board, that my esteemed opponent was a board member of the National Bank of Anguilla, and when she saw it fit to leave, she jumped and she left. However, when the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank came in here, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank did not just come into Anguilla because it wanted to come into Anguilla. It came into Anguilla because at the time they said Anguilla United Front administration leadership failed to do what it had to do to protect these institutions on behalf of the people of Anguilla. Thank you very much.
We are moving on to the final question of the evening. I'm informed that we will be able to have one more question. So the penultimate question, and at this question we will have Mr. Roberts give the first answer. Research has shown that dyslexic learners require a classroom environment and specially trained teachers that know how to handle dyslexic learners in their classroom. What is government's approach to providing qualified teachers and evaluators to diagnose students that show signs of dyslexia?
Well,
I will repeat one more time. Research has shown that dyslexic learners require a classroom environment and specially trained teachers that know how to handle dyslexic learners in their classroom. What is government's approach to providing qualified teachers and evaluators to diagnose students that show signs of dyslexia? You have 2 minutes.
thank you very much. Again, we lived in an environment where it's not a one-shoe-fit-all. Every one of us have our unique abilities. All of us have our different styles and approaches to moving forward in terms of education. And we have to look at our special needs, so to speak, children. And therefore, it is incumbent on any government to ensure that we have the monies to provide the necessary training for our teachers, the monies to ensure that we have the proper infrastructure to address these needs, and we have to have the resources, and not only just the resources, but we have to have persons who are caring, persons who are compassionate, and persons who really understand what it takes to work with these individuals to move them to the next level, and so as not to leave them behind because of their shortcomings. Each and every one of us must be treated fairly. Each and every one of us must be provided for in a manner that is sustainable, in a manner that God will indeed be proud of all of us at the end of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One of the mottos of the Sustainable Development Goals is leave no one behind. And in this case, it would be leave no child behind, especially as it comes to education. We do have currently in our school system teachers trained to identify learning disabilities, but we do not have specially trained teachers in dyslexia in particular at this point in time to be able to address the needs of our children. And more we're finding that we have a lot of children having special needs. Some of them are on varying degrees in terms of their learning disability or ability as it is. But we need to be able to have the resources to send off and train teachers specifically for these particular learning disabilities, not just dyslexia, but any of the other numbers of autism, etc., for them to be able to come back and spend the time and the ability to be able to teach. Now, it is an undertaking that needs serious investment because it cannot be just one teacher for a large number of students. And these children have to be able to progress as they go from grade to grade. And so they need to have continuous reinforcement. They need to be able to learn how to be able to work around the disability that they have and even work with it. And so it is something that we have to look at seriously, because at the end of the day, we cannot, our children, all of our children, each and every one of them have the potential to be able to succeed, and they just need the skills and the tools to be able to do so. Thank you.
We invite further comment or rebuttal from...
No, I think we agreed on the fact that
Yes.
training is necessary moving forward. So there's no need for us to belabor that point. Thank you very much.
And I will open the opportunity. I'm opening the opportunity if you would like to utilize your extra minute.
No, it's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Second version. What does your administration intend to do about festival and musical tourism? I repeat. What does your administration intend to do about festival and musical tourism? Miss Cora Richardson Hodge. Yeah, you have 2 minutes.
You said I have 2 minutes, 1 minute was. Thank you. And so we do know that in terms of festivals and music tourism, it was under a previous Anguilla United Front administration that jazz festivals had been created, a jazz festival had been created, and for some years it was doing very well. And it seems for whatever reason it was discontinued in about 2010. We need to be able to bring it back, because what the jazz festival did was to be able to bring, at a time when there are not many persons coming into Anguilla, it allowed persons to come in and to develop that area. We also are looking at, in terms of musical tourism, we have other activities that are ongoing. We do know that, for instance, Banky Banks, and there's always an attempt to continue to encourage musical festivals and musical tourism as a whole. But certainly we need to be able to look into areas in which we can continue to enhance the arts. It is necessary for the development of our children, for the development of our culture, and the development of our people as a whole. We also realize that our young people are very interested and very talented, and we need to continue to develop that talent. Right here in Anguilla, there's a lot of opportunities, there are a lot of possibilities, but we need to continue to be able to encourage them and to provide the opportunities as well. And I also need to mention as well the Anguilla Music Academy, which has been created as well to assist and further those efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Festivals are key to any island's or country's development and growth from an economic standpoint, and from the opportunity to showcase what you have in terms of your talent. It's not just what is important, but what you can export as well in terms of your talent. And in Anguilla's case, there's a lot that we have to offer. And a number of our young people are doing immense jobs in terms of making us proud on the international scale. Just today I had an opportunity to view Mr. Cardine Richardson conducting a musical program, whatever it was, basically, or a piece. And I was proud to see that a young Anguillian, who was a Cub Scout in my time, doing this in the international field. I think the Heritage Village, which I spoke about earlier in East End, is an opportunity for us to create and develop and turn into a festival village as well. Also, we talk a lot about agriculture. I think that it's important that we create a festival around agriculture that will bring people to our shores and showcase what it is that we as a people can grow and develop here. I was privileged to be here with the 6 farmers. I think it was a presentation that they were making, and there was a whole business about developing the Sanderground Salt Pond area. And I know that a number of persons have gravitated picking salt. Again, can we create a salt festival? It's something different, something that we can utilize in terms of helping to move our economy forward. Thank you.
We now invite any further comment or rebuttal.
Thank you. I would like to join in congratulating Mr. Richardson in his accomplishment. He is a master at his craft. In fact, he is one of those students that would have gone off to study on a government scholarship. And on his own, he would have completed the 4 years in 3 years and would have obtained the opportunity to do his master's degree within that 4th year. And so it is commendable where he's gotten. We all appreciate him. We are proud of him as an Anguillian who has gone a far afield and has done well for Anguilla. Thank you.
Mr. Roberts, any further comment?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President, do we really have time for one last question? Okay. Our final question of this evening. Many candidates in the upcoming elections are proposing population growth to boost economic development. What is your view on this premise? Many candidates in the upcoming elections are proposing population growth to boost economic development. What is your view on this premise? We will start first with Mr. Roberts, and you have a maximum of 2 minutes to deliver your response.
Well, I totally agree that we ought to look at growing our population, because as the very first question that we started off with, centered around taxation. And when you look at the base that we have, it's a very small base. And in terms of growing our population, it must be done in a sustainable manner. We just cannot go out there and just open ourselves and say Anguilla's open for growth and just leave any and everyone in. We have to ensure that when we talk about population growth, that we are bringing value to our shores as well in terms of the persons that will be coming to live and be among us. Population growth is critical, but we need to also to understand at what levels we're going to be moving into this direction, and not just, again, rush to bring in, as I said earlier, any and everyone just because we want to have an increase in our population size. Again, with population growth, what we need to do is ensure that we have expertise that are coming to our shores, because where we have areas of lack of expertise, we need to boost that, and if we can find that by bringing persons here, I would wholeheartedly embrace such. Thank you.
Me to repeat the question?
Thank you. I think one of the things that we need to look at is the creation of a national development plan. And we've discussed it. It's been a topic of conversation, administration after administration. But in order for us to truly understand how we are going to develop our country, we need to look at the industries that we want to develop. We need to look at how we're going to develop those industries, the skills that we need to develop those industries, whether we can train our people locally to go into those skills, or whether we need to bring in persons to be able to boost the population. And so we do have to look at how we want the country to develop. And I'm always amused when I hear persons say, just open the country and let everybody come. Because at the same time, if you do not have the economy, if you do not have the jobs available to be able to assist those persons when they come into the country, then you will end up with a more difficult situation. So we need to look at how we're going to develop our country over in the short term, mid-term, and long term, and then plan for that. Now, in terms of constitutional reform, in May of 2019, we were able to amend our Anguilla Constitution, which recognizes today grandchildren and great-grandchildren once they've been resident in Anguilla for 5 years. And so what the recognition of grandchildren does is it allows and encourages our own people who have gone overseas, and in many years past and still today, we have to travel afar to be able to assist those persons that have remained in Anguilla. And so it has always been difficult that we've excluded our grandchildren and great-grandchildren from being able to come back and invest and be a part of Anguilla. And so when we're talking about boosting and population growth, what better way to be able to boost our population than with our own people and encouraging them to return home? Thank you.
Mr. Roberts, we open the floor for an extra minute of comment
It's
or
quite
rebuttal.
fine. Let's move. Yeah, it's nothing to add.
No, thank you.
So that brings us to the end of our audience questions. We will now move on to the final statements, and I do believe we are allotted 3 minutes to give closing statements. And we will begin with Mrs. Cora Richardson Hodge.
Thank you.
Who's it?
Are you going in alternate? Because I think
We gave you the opportunity to do your closing remarks first because Mr. Roberts answered the final question first.
Okay, thank you. I'll continue. Thank you. Mr. and Ms. Moderator, I wish to once again thank you and the organizers for this esteemed event. I would like to thank the audience for coming out in such large numbers. At the end of the day, we are all one Anguilla, no matter what shirt we wear. As we head into the final days of the election campaign, the people of Anguilla, and in particular the people of the Sandy Hill District, have choices to make. In a constituency like District 2, there are only 2 candidates, both of whom have served a 5-year term in government, and both of whom are now seeking re-election. It is times like these where one's record of accomplishment is critical. I want to express my deep gratitude to the residents of District 2 for giving me the opportunity to represent you and your interests, not only in the district, but across the island as a whole. None of my many achievements in the Ministry of Home Affairs and in District 2 would have been possible without you. While I would have hoped to have accomplished everything that I set out to do over the last 5 years, it simply was not possible. There is so much more work to be done to fully achieve the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. For many well wishes and words of support that I have received over the years, and in particular over the past few weeks, I am confident that the residents of District 2 will re-elect to office the kind, caring, humble, capable, qualified, and forward-thinking representative that they have found in me. Thank you, and I love you all. Good night.
Mr. Roberts?
Ms. Moderator, Madam Moderator, I'd like to express my thanks again to the organizers of this debate for a job well done. I would also like to express thanks to my opponent for a spirited and respectable debate. To the audience present and those viewing via social media, and to those following via radio, I thank you for steering the course with us. These debates, I am sure, have helped immensely in guiding the process for the electorate as they are about to prepare to choose a new government in 10 days' time. These debates are not about who wins or who loses, but were organized purely for the edification of our people on the 17 Sustainable Goals. Anguilla has its role to play in helping to realize these goals, which are set to be achieved by the year 2030. While it is that we this evening would have only touched on a few of these goals, the reality is that all 17 ought to guide our operation on planet Earth and the way we relate to humankind. I am conscious that there is a place for everything under the sun, which also includes politics, and the various forums for specific discussion. I hasten not to speak about the hardships which we have endured over the past 5 years under the leadership of the failed Anguilla United Front administration, but will simply guide you to the manifesto of 2015, and that speaks for itself. Anguilla deserves better, and if we ought to make meaningful strides to achieve the sustainable goals, we need to change the course. We need to change the course. The opportunity for such change rests with the electorate on election day, June 26 and 29, 2020. I'm proud to be associated with a team that demonstrates love, care, and respect for all Anguillians, irrespective of political affiliation. The Anguilla Progressive Movement, under the capable leadership of Dr. Lorenzo Webster, the soon-to-be first elected premier, coming from District 1, the home of the revolution, is ready to lead a change for rebuilding and reshaping a new Anguilla. District number 2 this evening. In closing, I wish to thank you in particular for the overwhelming support which I have been receiving to date as we prepare to effect change in this district. To the families in Badcock's Sandy Hill Long Road, who after Hurricane Irma are still suffering from the lack of governmental assistance to restore your properties, I say keep hope alive. To the families who are still complaining about the difficulties experienced as a result of poor road conditions on your vehicles, I say stay alive and keep hope alive, There is much to be done in District number 2, and I stand ready to answer your call on election day, for change cannot wait. 5 votes, 5 votes. God bless you, and may God continue to bless Anguilla.
We thank you once again for joining us. Thank you once again. We thank you once again for joining us. Thank you once again.